Now let us study one of the important topic in third year, that is anticoagulants or the drugs which are acting on blood. Our topic is drugs which are acting on the blood. So before going into the detailed study of drugs which are acting on the blood, we need to have clear idea about what is coagulation. What is coagulation? So I have made a video on the detailed study of coagulation in our first year, but let us have one brief study about the coagulation. Now let us consider this is a blood vessel, and here these are the endothelial cells. Let us consider this is one of the blood vessel, and these are the endothelial cells. So normally the blood is present within the liquid form. Now what happens in coagulation means, if there is any abnormal condition or any physical any trauma takes place in this blood vessel, now some part of the blood vessel will get damaged. So what is the first step when it get damaged means, there will be vasoconstriction of this endothelial cells. Now let us consider some part is damaged here. Let us consider here some part of endothelial cell is get damaged. Now whatever the affected part of the endothelial cells is damaged, it will release special factors. So what are the special factors which are released by affected endothelial cells are called von Willebrand factors. So von Willebrand factors, these are von Willebrand factors. Von Willebrand factors are the special proteins which are released by the affected endothelial cells. So what is the function of this von Willebrand factors means, they have special hook-like structures. What is the function of these hook-like structures means, they helps in capturing the platelets. In this way the platelets will get attached on the surface of von Willebrand receptors. So how these platelets will get attached means, with the help of glycoprotein 2B3A receptor, glycoprotein 2B3A enzyme. Now after this attachment, so this is called primary platelet plug formation. So what happens after this means, there are two pathways will get activated within our body. So what are the two pathways will get activated within our body means, first pathway is called intrinsic pathway. First pathway is called intrinsic pathway, while the alternate next pathway is called extrinsic pathway. One is intrinsic pathway, while the next one is extrinsic pathway. So what happens in, what is the ultimate goal of intrinsic pathway and extrinsic pathway, and what is the result of intrinsic pathway and extrinsic pathway means, first of all let us come to the intrinsic pathway. So what happens in intrinsic pathway means, first of all, there is a clotting factor number 12 will come into picture. Clotting factor number 12 will get activated. It will get activated. This is the first step. So whenever these get activated, it will activate another factor. It will activate another factor, that is factor number 11. Factor number 11. Now this factor number will activate factor number 9. Factor number 9. Now this factor number 9 along with factor number 8 will result in activation of factor number 10. Factor number 10. So this factor number 10 will come into picture, like factor number 10A will get activated by intrinsic pathway. Now this factor number 10A will activate another factor, that is coagulation factor number 2 into activated coagulation factor number. So this 2 is called prothrombin. Whereas this 2A is called thrombin. Two is called prothrombin, whereas 2A is called thrombin. Now this function of this 2A, that is thrombin, will activate plasminogen into plasmin. Plasminogen will get converted into plasmin. Now whatever the plasmin which is formed will activate another protein. So it converts fibrinogen into fibrin. So it converts fibrinogen into fibrin. Now let us keep this aside, that is extrinsic pathway. What happens in intrinsic pathway means, in intrinsic pathway factor number 7 will get come into picture. That is factor number 7. Now this factor number 7 can directly activate the factor number 10. It directly activates the factor number 10. So whatever the 10A which is activated will have same function, like it activates prothrombin into thrombin, and thrombin will convert plasminogen into plasmin, and plasmin will convert fibrinogen into fibrin. So whatever the fibrin which is formed, it forms the meshwork on the platelet plug. In this way, now whenever the fibrin is formed on the surface of this primary platelet plug, so it is called permanent thrombus formation. This is the coagulation system which takes normal coagulation system which takes place in our body. So our first topic which we are discussing under this drugs acting on blood are anti-aggregants. Our first topic is about anti-aggregants. So what are anti-aggregants? topic is anti-aggregants. What are anti-aggregants? Anti-aggregants are the group of drugs which inhibit the aggregation of platelets in case of coagulation of a blood. Once again, anti-aggregants are the group of drugs which inhibits the aggregation of platelets during the process of coagulation system, which results in anticoagulation effect. So, what are anti-aggregants? So, before going into detail of anti-aggregants, let us have one diagram. Let us consider this is one blood vessel. Now, and here these are some of the endothelial cells. These are some of the endothelial cells and it is one of the blood vessel. Now we have discussed about coagulation system. So our topic is about now anti-aggregants. What are anti-aggregants? Anti-aggregants are the group of drugs which inhibit the aggregation of platelets. So what happens during the case of anti-aggregants means, let us consider here some part of endothelium is get ruptured. Here some part of endothelium is get ruptured. Here it is get ruptured. So what happens at the site of rupture means they will release two set of proteins, two kind of proteins. What are the proteins which are released from the affected site of blood vessel means they release two types of proteins. One is von Willebrand factor they release von Willebrand factor and they release collagen. So we don't have any function with this we don't have any information regarding, we need not study about collagen here. Our main factor is von Willebrand factors. Our main important motto is von Willebrand factor. So what happens whenever this von Willebrand factor and collagen is liberated means they will release or they will activate the platelets. They will activate the platelets. Now the platelets are get activated. Platelets are activated. So platelets will get activated. After the platelets will get activated, the activated platelets will result in releasing of four important substances. Once again, the activated platelets will result in release of four important chemicals or important four proteins. So what are the four proteins means? The first one is first type of proteins are phospholipids from the activated platelets. Phospholipids are the first type of proteins which are released from the activated platelets. So what is the next type of protein is? Next type of protein is thromboxane A2. This is second type of protein, that is first one is phospholipids, second one is thromboxane A2, while the third one is ADP receptors. ADP receptors, or it is also called P2Y12 receptors. Is also called P2Y12 receptors. So first one is phospholipids, second one is thromboxane A2, third one is ADP receptors, while the last one is the conformation changes within glycoprotein 2B3A receptor. So glycoprotein 2B3A proteins. Change in glycoprotein 2B3A. These are the four important proteins or chemicals which are released from the activated platelets. So the first one is, it results in activation of changes in glycoprotein 2B3A, and next one is ADP receptor stimulation, or next type is they will activate thromboxane A2, or they may release phospholipids. So these are the four chemicals which are released by activated platelets. One is they release phospholipids, they release thromboxane A2, they release ADP receptors, or they activate ADP receptors, and there will be changes in glycoprotein 2B3A receptor. So apart from these, apart from phospholipids, thromboxane A2, ADP receptor activation, and changes in glycoprotein 2B result, these three will result in activation of these three will result in aggregation of platelets. So these three will result in aggregation of platelets. They result in platelet aggregation. Now, what is the function of phospholipids? So, whenever there is aggregation of platelets is taking place, these phospholipids will get activated. So, what is this phospholipids will activate? Whenever these phospholipids are activated, they will activate coagulation system. Coagulation system will get activated. Now, whenever this coagulation system is get activated, then there will be conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. There will be conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. Conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. So, these fibrin which is formed will get attached on surface of platelets. That is platelet aggregation. So, let us consider this is fibrin. They will get attached on surface of platelets. Let us consider this is platelet aggregation. Let us consider this is platelet aggregation. So, whenever this fibrin is get attached, so whenever fibrin will get activated, then these fibrin will form mesh network like structure on these platelets. Now this is a complete permanent thrombus. So it acts as coagulant, so it stopped the bleeding. Now this is normal physiology which is taking place, but what are antiaggregants? So what are the type of pharmacology which can be acted at this area, which are working as antiaggregants? So what are the group of drugs which can administer? So one more point, here it is a fibrin. We can break down the fibrin by plasminogen into plasmin. That is, plasminogen will get converted into plasmin. So in normal coagulation system, I have told that the plasminogen will get converted into plasmin and it will activate the fibrinogen into fibrin. But there was a mistake I have done, that these now fibrinogen will get converted into fibrin. So we can break the fibrin, like from plasminogen will get converted into plasmin. From tissue plasminogen factor. From tissue plasminogen factor. So what are the plasmin which is formed can break down the fibrin. It can break down the fibrin. So what are the antiaggregants? What are the group of antiaggregants means? First of all, the first type of antiaggregants means we can inhibit this thromboxane A2. This is the first group, first type of drugs which can work as antiaggregants. That means if there is thromboxane A2 get inhibited, there is no platelet aggregation. If there is no platelet aggregation, there is no primary platelet plug formation. If there is no primary platelet plug formation, there is no coagulation system activated. If there is no coagulation system is get activated, there is no formation of fibrin. If there is no formation of fibrin, there is no formation of secondary platelet plug. So this is the first type of group of drugs. Like the first group of drugs is inhibiting the thromboxane A2. This is the first group of drugs. Now let us discuss the names of drugs which are inhibiting this group of let us discuss the name of the drugs which are acting in this area after some time. But keep in mind that first group of drugs are thromboxane A2 inhibitors. These are first group of drugs. So what are next group of drugs means? This is completed. Next one is ADP receptor blockers. This is second group of drugs. These are the second group of drugs. First group of drugs is thromboxane A2 inhibitors. Second group of drugs is ADP receptor inhibitors. So whenever ADP receptor is inhibited, there is no platelet aggregation, there is no primary platelet plug formation, there is no coagulation system activation, there is no fibrin formation, there is no secondary platelet plug formation. So this is a second group of drugs which are working as anti-aggregants. So ADP receptor blockers or P2Y12 receptor blockers. First one is thromboxane A2, second one is ADP receptor blockers. Now the next group of drugs are these glycoprotein 2B receptor blockers, 2B3A receptor blockers. Glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blockers. Glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blockers. So there are three group of drugs which are working as anti-aggregants. If there is glycoprotein 2B3A receptor is inhibited, then platelet aggregation cannot be done. If platelet aggregation cannot be done, there is no primary plug formation, there is no secondary plug formation. So these are the first three group of drugs, first three class of drugs which are working as anti-aggregants. So what may be the next chance of antiaggregants means in this condition. So as I told that fibrinogen will get converted into fibrin. If there is no fibrin in this area, they cannot form the secondary platelet plug. Unless the secondary platelet plug is formed, this is not called permanent platelet plug. So if there is formation of only fibrin, then if it is get attached on surface of this platelet, it is called as secondary platelet plug. So if we if we break the fibrin, then there is no formation of secondary platelet plug. So what are the conditions which can block this fibrin means we should increase the production of plasmin. If plasmin production is increased, it automatically inhibits the fibrin. So what are the group of drugs which can act in this area? These are the tissue plasminogen factor activators. These are the fourth group of drugs. Tissue plasminogen factor, fourth group of drugs. First one is thromboxane A2 inhibitors, second one is ADP receptor blockers, third one is glycoprotein 2B3 receptor blockers, and fourth one is tissue plasminogen activators. So next one is also there, that is plasminogen, that is antifibrinolytics. We will study next after some time. So these are the group of drugs which are administered in this area: thromboxane A2 inhibitors, ADP receptor blockers, glycoprotein 2B3 receptor blockers, and tissue plasminogen factor activators. So what are the, now let us discuss the group of drugs which are coming in this area. First group of drugs are thromboxane A2 receptor, thromboxane A2 inhibitors. Thromboxane A2 inhibitors. So what are the drugs which comes under thromboxane A2 inhibitors means aspirin. Aspirin is a drug which comes under thromboxane A2 inhibitors. So what is the mechanism of action of thromboxane A2? Aspirin means it is irreversibly inhibiting cyclooxygenase pathway. Inhibitor of COX-2 enzyme. It irreversibly inhibits the COX-2 enzyme. If there is inhibition of COX-2 enzyme, then there will be decrease in synthesis of thromboxane A2. Decrease the synthesis of thromboxane A2. If there is decrease in the synthesis of thromboxane A2, there is less platelet aggregation. There is less platelet aggregation, there is no platelet plug formation. So it will act as anti-aggregant. It will be acting as anti-aggregant. So this is the mechanism of action of aspirin. There are two mechanisms of action. The aspirin can act in two ways, but the main action is it inhibits the COX enzyme. So what are the uses? What are the uses of aspirin? So it is the first line drug for myocardial infarction, it is the first line drug for myocardial infarction and stroke. For myocardial infarction as well as stroke. It is a first line drug for myocardial infarction and stroke. So the dose is 50 to 320 mg. 250 to 320 mg daily. That is aspirin. It is a first line drug for myocardial infarction as well as stroke. So there is also a side effect for the aspirin. That is side effects. First one is bleeding. Why it results in bleeding means, as there is anti-aggregation process, there is no coagulation system taking place. If there is no coagulation system taking place, there is ultimately bleeding condition will be taking place. So this is the first group of drug, that is aspirin, which comes under thromboxane A2 inhibitors. That are first group of drugs which are working as anti-aggregants. Coming to the second group of drugs, ADP receptor blockers. That are ADP receptor blockers, it's also called P2Y12 receptors. Which are P2Y12 receptors. So what the drugs which are comes under ADP receptor blockers are classified into two categories. One is irreversible and next one is reversible. These drugs will irreversibly bind the ADP receptors. These drugs will reversibly bind the ADP receptors. So, what are the drugs which comes under irreversible inhibitors means? First one is first type of drug which comes under irreversible ADP receptor blockers are clopidogrel. So, what are the important terms about the clopidogrel is, first of all, it is irreversible inhibitor of ADP receptor. It is irreversible inhibitor of ADP receptors, and this is a preferred irreversible ADP receptors, and it is next one, it is form of prodrug. It is a form of prodrug. So whenever clopidogrel is a drug administered into our body, then it will react with special enzyme called cytochrome P2,619. It will react with a protein called cytochrome P2,619. So whenever clopidogrel is attached to reacted with this protein, this clopidogrel will show its action. So this clopidogrel, whenever it reacts with cytochrome P2,619 enzyme or protein, this clopidogrel will show its action by irreversibly binding to that ADP receptors. So there is a condition called genetic polymorphism. In case of genetic polymorphism, that is gene mutations in the gene, then if a person or a patient suffering from genetic polymorphism, let us consider clopidogrel drug is given to the person who is suffering from genetic polymorphism. So what is the condition or what is the result means, this clopidogrel which is administered cannot attach to this cytochrome P2,619, and if it is not binding to the cytochrome P2,619 enzyme or protein, this clopidogrel cannot get activated easily. That is, the activation of clopidogrel will get decreased in patients with genetic polymorphism. So what is the condition, what is the result means, there is a warning call black box warning. Which is FDA issued, Food Drug Administration issued. What is black box warning means? It explains that whenever a person suffering from genetic polymorphism, if he has taken the clopidogrel drug, then the affinity of clopidogrel drug with the cytochrome P2,619 is decreased, and whenever the clopidogrel drug is not attached to the cytochrome P2,619, then the activation of this clopidogrel drug will get decreased. That means the action of clopidogrel drug will get decreased. Now this is the information about clopidogrel. Now what are the uses of clopidogrel? So before going to uses, there is one more disadvantage, means if there is excessive usage of this clopidogrel in normal patient, it results in high risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. It results in myocardial infarction and stroke. So next, coming to the uses, it is a preferred drug of ADP receptor blocker. It is a most preferred drug for ADP receptor blockers. And if we use, let us consider a patient with peripheral vascular disease, then like peripheral vascular side in normal patient, in normal conditions, if we use, let us consider normal patient, if we use clopidogrel for longer time, there is high risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. Then if a patient suffering from peripheral vascular disease, then these clopidogrel along with aspirin, along with irreversible ADP receptor, this is a combination should be given. Like whenever a patient suffering from peripheral vascular disease, then the treatment or combination treatment is irreversible ADP receptor like clopidogrel along with aspirin should be given in order to cure this peripheral vascular disease. So this is some information about clopidogrel. Now coming to the next drug is prasugrel. Next drug is prasugrel. So what is prasugrel? What is the mechanism of action? That means same, it inhibits the ADP receptor blockers. But there are one more important, that is it is most efficacious drug when compared to that of clopidogrel. Prasugrel is the most efficacious drug and it is the fastest acting drug. But there is high risk of bleeding. There is high risk of bleeding. This is prasugrel, and it is contraindicated in cerebral vascular diseases. It is contraindicated in patients suffering from cerebral vascular diseases. So this is about prasugrel. And next one is ticlopidine. This is ticlopidine. So this is the least efficacious drug and they have long side effects like normal nausea and vomiting, and it includes agranulocytosis. It inhibits granulocytosis and it results in thrombocytopenia. And it results in thrombotic, one special syndrome like thrombocytopenic purpurea, hemolytic uremic syndrome. Thrombotic, thrombocytopenic, purpurea, hemolytic uremic syndrome. So these are the side effects of ticlopidine. So these are the irreversible drugs like clopidogrel, prasugrel, and ticlopidine. So these are the drugs which comes under irreversible inhibitors. So now next one is reversible. Again, these reversible are of two types. One is competitive and next one is non-competitive. Competitive and non-competitive. So what are the drugs which comes under competitive is cangrelor. Cangrelor. So what are these cangrelor means? It is adenosine analog. Cangrelor is adenosine analog and it is having shortest half-life. The like 3 to 6 minutes, only 3 to 6 minutes. The cangrelor is the shortest acting drug and it is adenosine receptor, so adenosine analog, and it is given in the form of IV. It is given in form of ID and it is used in acute myocardial infarctions. Acute myocardial infarction. And next one is non-competitive reversible inhibitor of ADP receptor like ticagrelor. It is ticagrelor. When cangrelor is given in the form of intravenous, whereas ticagrelor is given in form of orally. It is oral drug and it is used for a prophylaxis of myocardial infarction as well as stroke. So these are the second group of drugs which are working as anti-aggregates. Now coming to the third group of drugs, which are glycoprotein 2B3A blockers. Glycoprotein 2B3A blockers. So what are drugs which comes under glycoprotein 2B? Abiximab. Abiximab is the first drug which comes under glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blocker. So mechanism of action. What is the mechanism of action means? They have two actions. One is they block glycoprotein 2B3A protein and they block one special protein within our blood vessels or within our blood like vitronectin. So this is a mechanism of action of abiximab, that is it inhibits the glycoprotein 2B3A. If there is inhibition of glycoprotein 2B3A protein, there is no platelet aggregation. If there is no platelet aggregation, there is no primary platelet plug formation. If there is no primary platelet plug formation, there is no fibrin will get come into picture and there is no action of primary platelet plug formation. So this is the first, abiximab is the first drug which comes under glycoprotein 2B3A receptor and it is the most efficacious and it is the most efficacious drug and it is having short life. It is having short half-life. It is having the short half-life, and one more important use of this abiximab is they are having more affinity with glycoprotein 2B3. That means they have more affinity to glycoprotein 2B receptor. They attach more to the glycoprotein 2B3 receptor and inhibit the glycoprotein 2B3A receptor. So, and it is having it is a longest acting drug. So this is the first group of first drug, and next one is eptifibatidate, eptifibatide, EPTIFIBA TIDE, eptifibatide. So it is having longest half-life. Mechanism of action is same, longest. It is having the longest half-life, where it is having the minimum affinity with that of glycoprotein 2B3A. It is having minimum affinity with glycoprotein 2B3A receptor. And next last drug is tirofiban. This is the last drug. It is the most potent anti-aggregant. If we see the order of anti-aggregant drugs, the first potent drugs are like glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blockers, (3A blockers). These are first group of drugs. Next potent drugs are ADP receptor blockers. ADP receptor blocks. So next potent drugs are thromboxane A2 inhibitors. So this is the order of anti-aggregants. This is the order of anti-aggregants. That is, first one is high potents are glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blockers, glycoprotein 2B3A inhibitors, and next one are ADP receptor blockers, and next one are thromboxane A2 inhibitors. So these are some of the drugs, and there is one side effect with the glycoprotein 2B3A receptor blockers are these all drugs will result in bleeding. These all drugs will result in the bleeding. So this is about anti-aggregants. Now next let us discuss about fibrinolytics and antifibrinolytics. Before going into detail of fibrinolytics and antifibrinolytics, let us go into coagulation system. In one of the step in coagulation system, that is conversion of plasminogen into plasmin. Plasminogen into plasmin with the help of tissue plasminogen activator. Tissue plasminogen activator. So whenever this plasmin is formed, it results in breaking of fibrin. It results in breaking of the fibrin. So what are the fibrinolytics we can administer? First one is streptokinase. So what is the mechanism of action of streptokinase means? This streptokinase, it will bind with the plasminogen. Then it will act like tissue plasminogen activator. Then it results in formation of plasmin. It results in formation of plasmin. Then when a plasmin is formed, it results in breaking down of fibrin. It results in breakdown of fibrin. So in this way, this streptokinase is acting a fibrinolytic drug. This is the first group of drug. So there are some drawbacks of this streptokinase. So this streptokinase is not a clot specific. It is not a clot specific drug. And next one is, there is high risk of bleeding. There is increase in risk of bleeding. And next one is, there is synthesis of antibodies. Antibodies production will be increased in our body. So there are some drawbacks of this streptokinase. And next one is, that is, first we have discussed that streptokinase, that is, it binds with the TP analogs. Sorry, it binds with the plasminogen. And next group of drugs are, they are the tissue plasminogen activator analogs. That is, tissue plasminogen activator analogs. If there is tissue plasminogen activator analog, it activates the plasminogen. That is, tissue plasminogen activator analogs. What are the drugs which comes under tissue plasminogen analogs are alteplase, retiplase, tenecteplase. These are the three drugs which comes under a tissue plasminogen activator. So it acts as tissue plasminogen activator and converts plasminogen into plasmin. Mechanism of action is same. Converts the plasminogen into plasmin. If there is more production of plasmin, it results in breakdown of fibrin. If there is breakdown of fibrin, then there is no meshwork formation of fibrin on primary platelet formation. There is no formation of secondary platelet plug. As a result, there is no coagulation system. It results in anticoagulation property. So these are the in this way, these are two drugs, two classes of drugs which works as fibrinolytics, and there are some side effects of total tissue plasminogen activators, like they increase the risk of bleeding, and there are uses of these TPA analogs. They are used in prophylaxis of ST segment elevated myocardial infarction, ST segment elevated myocardial infarction, and ischemic stroke. And there are some contraindications, like BRAIN. B means if there is any brain surgery. If a patient undergone any brain surgery, then tissue plasminogen analog should not be used. And next one is any recent brain surgery. If there is any recent brain surgery, these tissue plasminogen analogs cannot be given. And next one is aortic dissection. If there is any aortic dissections, then this tissue plasminogen analog should not be given. And next one is intracranial hemorrhage. If there is any intracranial hemorrhage, these tissue plasminogen analogs cannot be given. Next one is non-compressible vascular punctures. Non-compressible valvular patches, not non-compressible vascular patches. So these tissue plasminogen activators cannot be given. So these are fibrinolytics. What are antifibrinolytics means? That is, antifibrinolytics are the drugs which inhibit plasminogen and plasmin. So they will increase the fibrin content. If there is increase in fibrin content, it results in coagulation system. So what are the two drugs which acts as antifibrinolytics are? First one is epsilon amino caproic acid. First one is epsilon amino caproic acid. So it is, what are the uses means? It is used in fibrinolytic induced bleeding. There is excessive, which results excessive bleeding because of fibrinolytics. Then these epsilon amino caproic acid should be given. That is first use. Then bleeding with surgery. If there is any condition bleeding while surgery, these antifibrinolytics can be given. That is first group, epsilon amino caproic acid. And next one is tranexamic acid. Tranexamic acid. So it is only for metrohemorrhage, that is heavy bleeding during the periods. So these are some antifibrinolytics and antifibrinolytics. So we have completed fibrinolytics, antifibrinolytics and antiaggregates. Next, let us move to the anticoagulants. Anticoagulants. So while studying about the anticoagulants, we need to study two parallel systems which are taking place within our body. That is coagulation system one is coagulation system which is running parallelly with that of anticoagulation system. These two should work in parallel manner in order to form unwanted thrombus in our body. That is, coagulation system should run parallel with that of anticoagulation system. So what are the conditions which results in coagulation system means? That is, factor number 10 should convert into activated factor number 10. Then next it should activate factor number 2 into 2A. It should convert factor number 2 into 2A. So this factor number 2 is called prothrombin and 2A is called thrombin. Now this thrombin will convert fibrinogen into fibrin. Fibrinogen into fibrin. Converts fibrinogen into fibrin. This is about coagulation system. What about anticoagulation system means? There are some proteins like protein C, protein S. So protein C is also called autoprothrombin C. These will result in anticoagulation effect. And next one is antithrombin 3. These will break factor number 2A, and it inhibits factor number 7A. It inhibits factor number 9A, and it inhibits factor number 10A, it inhibits factor number 12A, and it inhibits factor number 11A, and it inhibits factor number 13A. So whenever these factors get inhibited, there is no result of coagulation system. Ultimately, it results in anticoagulation system. So these are two systems which are working in parallel manner, that is coagulation system and anticoagulation system. So what are the drugs which can be administered in this area means, as an anticoagulant, the first group of drugs are, we can inhibit factor 10A. So if factor 10A get inhibited, they cannot activate 2A. If 2A is not activated, they cannot form fibrin. If there is no formation of fibrin, there is no coagulation system. That is first group of drug. And next one is, we can block 2A. We can block 2A. If 2A is blocked, there is no formation of protein, fibrin. There is no coagulation system. This is next one. And coming to the anticoagulation system, there are some drugs which can act here also, that is antithrombin 3 analogs or antithrombin 3 activators. If antithrombin 3 is get activated, then it may break 2A, 9A, 10A, 11A, 12A, 13A easily. So these are the conditions which results in anticoagulation effect. So these are the first group of first class of drug. These are not included as a class. These are included as other class. This is a first class of drug, and this is a second class of drugs, which are working as anticoagulants. So now these 2A inhibitors are this 2A is also called thrombin. So these factor 2A inhibitors are also called direct thrombin inhibitors. These are called direct thrombin inhibitors, whereas this antithrombin 3 is inhibiting, so these are called indirect thrombin inhibitors. Indirect thrombin, these are direct thrombin inhibitors, and these are the indirect thrombin inhibitors. So let us discuss about direct thrombin inhibitors first. First group of drugs, they are direct thrombin inhibitors. So again, these direct thrombin inhibitors are again classified under two categories. One is orally acting direct thrombin inhibitors, whereas next one is parenterally. Parenteral acting direct thrombin inhibitors. So what are the drugs which comes under oral direct thrombin inhibitors, like zamilogatran, zamilogatran is a first drug, but it is a banned drug because this drug is banned because of there is toxic effect in the liver. It results in hepatotoxicity. So next drug which is derivative of this zamilogatran is dabigatran. So like dabigatran. So it is the most preferred oral direct thrombin inhibitor drug, that is dabigatran. So this dabigatran will be given as a combination with 10A inhibitors. So what are the drugs which comes under 10A coagulation factor 10A inhibitors are apixaban, rivaroxaban, these are the two drugs, apixaban and rivaroxaban. So these are the two drugs which comes under 10A inhibitors. So one important point to remember is, before going into that important point, let us discuss some uses, and these are used for the prophylaxis of deep vein thrombosis. It results in, sorry, it can be used in a condition like deep vein thrombosis, or next one is in prophylaxis of thrombosis with a patient suffering from atrial fibrillation. So these are the two important uses. Like first one is deep vein thrombosis and patient suffering from atrial fibrillations. Now one important point to remember is orally acting direct thrombin inhibitors plus these 10A inhibitors are collectively called novel anticoagulative drugs. So these novel anticoagulative drugs are more preferred than normal anticoagulatives like heparin and warfarin. What is the reason to use more frequently is these drugs do not require monitoring like APTT monitoring or PT monitoring, whereas warfarin and heparin requires APTT monitoring and PT monitoring. So these are the drugs novel anticoagulant drugs. So these are orally acting drugs. And coming to the parenteral acting, before going into parenteral acting, we need to discuss about the synthesis or discovery of parenteral drugs. Like there was a scientist, he observed bleeding from the area where leech was bitten. So he took the leech, and from the leech he took a sample of saliva, and from the sample of saliva of leech he made a drug called hirudin. So why it is named as hirudin means the scientific name of leech is hirudina. So from the scientific name of leech hirudina, there is a drug called hirudin, which is natural drug. Hirudin, this is the first natural drug to be synthesized parenterally from the saliva of a leech. So from this hirudin, there are two more semi-synthetic parenterally acting direct thrombin inhibitors are synthesized. So what are that are lepirudin and desirudin. Lepirudin and desirudin. So these are two drugs which are semi-synthetic form of parenterally acting direct thrombin inhibitors. And from these, one more synthetic drug, two synthetic drugs are formed. So what are the two synthetic drugs are bivalirudin and argatroban. These two are the synthetic, these are the two semi-synthetic, and these are natural. So one important point to remember is these hirudin along with lepirudin along with desirudin along with bivalirudin, these are called divalent direct thrombin inhibitors. Why these are called divalent direct thrombin inhibitor means thrombin has two active sites. One is for catalytic activity and next one is, that means it will inhibit the catalytic activity. It inhibits the catalytic site, and next one is substrate recognition site. It will inhibit these two sites. So as a result, it is called divalent direct thrombin inhibitors. Whereas argatroban is, it inhibits only catalytic site. It inhibits only the catalytic site. So it is called as monovalent. It is monovalent direct thrombin inhibitors. So there are some uses of these drugs. First of all, this lepirudin is used in hepatic induced thrombocytopenia. Lepirudin is used in case of hepatic induced thrombocytopenia, and deciridine is used for prophylaxis of deep vein thrombosis, whereas bivalirudin is used for treatment of myocardial infarction, whereas argatroban is used for same treatment of hepatic induced thrombocytopenia. And there are some contraindications for this parenterally route. There are patients suffering from renal failure. If any patient suffering from the renal failure, these parenteral drugs should not be given. So why? Because means these are the drugs which are excreted from the liver, excreted from the kidneys. But there is one exception called argatroban. Argatroban can be given with patients suffering from renal failure. Why? Because argatroban will be excreted from the liver. So this is about anticoagulant like direct thrombin and direct thrombin inhibitors. Now next coming to the indirect thrombin inhibitors. Indirect thrombin inhibitors. So the main drug which comes in here is heparin. So indirect thrombin inhibitors are again classified to three classes. First one is unfractionated heparin. Unfractionated heparin. So what is unfractionated heparin means? We need to study the structure of heparin. So heparin is pentasaccharide molecule, active pentasaccharide molecule. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is active pentasaccharide molecule. This is active pentasaccharide molecule. So to this active pentasaccharide molecule, many heteropolymers are attached. Many heteropolymers are attached. So how it will show its action means, these active pentasaccharide, this is active pentasaccharide, they will attach to the antithrombin 3. They will attach to the antithrombin 3. So these, whenever it is attached to antithrombin 3, these antithrombin 3 will inhibit 10A. They will get inhibited. 10A cannot be, if 10A cannot be formed, that cannot activate 2A. That is, if 2A is not activated, there is no thrombin activation, there is no fibrin formation will be taking place. So one of the there are some disadvantages also, and these antithrombin 3 can inhibit factor number 10A, as well as these heteropolymers can inhibit (2A). They can inhibit 2A. As the chain is more long, they can inhibit more in number. It can inhibit more in number. So when we come to when we check the action, so this unfractionated heparin is glycosomal this unfractionated heparin, it is derived from the intestinal mucosa, that is pores intestinal mucosa. So if we check the action, there is a similar action on 10A protein with that of 2A protein. 10A protein with that of 2A protein. So our main aim is to show the action of 10A, to show the action on 10A protein. So this is not working. This is not working. So we have modified the drug into next form, that is low molecular weight heparin. Low molecular weight heparin. What is low molecular weight heparin means? We cannot cut the active pentasaccharide molecules. We can cut the heteropolysaccharide molecules with endopeptidase enzyme. So here this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is active pentasaccharide molecule, and we are cutting the number of these heteropolysaccharides. So here these will get attached to antithrombin 3, whereas these heteropolymer will attach to the 2A, will attach to 2A. So what are the drugs which comes under low molecular weight heparin are called enoxaparin, and tinzaparin. Enoxaparin and tinzaparin. So these are two drugs which comes under low molecular weight heparin. So if we consider the action, these low molecular weight heparin can show more action and on 10A when compared to 2A. But this is also not up to the mark. We made another alterations, another modifications within the drug. That is, next group of drug is fondaparinux. Fondaparinux. This is a third class of drug which are working as indirect thrombin inhibitors. Fondaparinux. So what is the structure of fondaparinux is, there is only pentamer. There is only pentasaccharide, active pentasaccharide. So when this active pentasaccharide is formed, this active pentasaccharide molecule can directly act only on antithrombin 3. There is no heteropolysaccharide. As a result, there is no action of inhibition of 2A protein. So there is complete action on only 10A. Why we need to show action on only on 2A, so only on 10A, but not on 2A means there is some side effects like heparin induced thrombocytopenia. One of the main important side effect of indirect thrombin inhibitors. So what is hepatic induced thrombocytopenia means? let us consider these three diagrams. Here there is more heteropolysaccharide, less heteropolysaccharide, no polysaccharide. So these heteropolysaccharides, whenever it present in more, there may be chance of production of antibodies against to these heteropolysaccharides. As a result, heteropolysaccharide and against the antibodies are produced against the heteropolysaccharides. So whenever antibodies are produced against heteropolysaccharides, then they will activate the platelets. So if there is more activation of platelets, there is more thrombus formation. So platelet aggregation will be increased. If there is platelet aggregation is increased, the amount of the platelets towards the thrombus formation will be increased. As a result, the platelet count within the blood will get decreased. So whenever there is decrease in the platelet count within the blood because of inducing of heparin, it results in a condition called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, because there is decrease in the volume of decrease in the concentration of platelets within the blood, as there is excessive amount of platelets are going to the site of thrombus formation. This is called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. So these are some indirect thrombin inhibitors, and there are some differences between the unfractionated heparin and low molecular weight heparin and fondaparinux, and this is short acting, these two are long acting drugs, whereas these unfractionated should be given in multiple doses, they should be given in less doses, like once in daily. And APTT monitoring is required in this condition. APTT monitoring is not required in these conditions, and it is preferred for catheter induced thrombocytosis, and it is these two drugs are preferred for myocardial infarction, deep vein thrombosis, and unstable anginas. And next one is, these unfractionated heparin can show action on tissue. They can show action on triacylglycerol. They can decrease the action of triacylglycerol by they inhibit the action of lipoprotein lipases. It results in hypolipidemic conditions. They cannot result in hypolipidemic conditions. So there are some more side effects like HOT. H for hair loss, hypokalemia, and hemorrhage, and O for osteoporosis, and P for thrombocytopenia. So these are some side effects of indirect thrombin inhibitors. And next one is oral anticoagulant. Oral anticoagulant, that is warfarin. One more important point, the antidote for heparin is protamine sulfate. So coming to the warfarin, there is a vitamin called vitamin K, which is inactive form, will get converted into vitamin K1, that is active form, with the help of enzyme called vitamin K oxidoreductase 2, oxidoreductase type 2. Whenever this vitamin K is activated, then it results in activation of gamma carbamylase. Results in activation of gamma carbamylase. Then this gamma carbamylase will activate. They will activate factor number 2A, and they will activate factor number 7A, and they will activate factor number 9A, and they will activate factor number 10A. So at which area this warfarin, that is mechanism of action, they will act or they will inhibit the vitamin K oxidoreductase type 2. If these cells get inhibited, there is no activation of vitamin K, there is no formation of carbamylase, gamma carbamylase, there is no activation of these coagulation proteins. So there are some uses of heparin. It is orally taken and it is used for the prophylaxis of thrombosis in deep vein thrombosis and atrial fibrillations. And there are some side effects like skin necrosis, teratogenesis, and alopecia, etc. And when we are taking the warfarin, we need to follow the monitorings of INR. The normal INR range is 0.9 to 1.3, but when we take the warfarin, it may be result in with warfarin. It may be more than, it may be between 2 to 3. If INR is less than 5 and patient is asymptomatic, then we should stop warfarin. If INR value is less than 5 and patient is asymptomatic, we should stop the warfarin. If INR value is more than 5 and patient is asymptomatic, we should give vitamin K. Vitamin K1, that is the antidote for warfarin is vitamin K1. And if INR values are more than 20, we need to go to the treatment like fresh frozen plasma. Fresh frozen plasma. So this is the oral anticoagulant like warfarin, which inhibits the vitamin K oxidoreductase enzyme, and if it is get blocked, there is no activation of gamma carbamylase and there is no activation of these protein clotting factors. And these are the uses. They are used in deep vein thrombosis and atrial fibrillations, and side effects are skin necrosis, teratogenesis, and alopecia. And we need to monitor the INR values. The normal values is 0.9 to 2.3, and when we take the warfarin, it may go to 2 to 3. And if INR values is less than 5 and patient is asymptomatic, we should stop warfarin. And if INR values are more than 5 and patient is asymptomatic, we should give vitamin K. If INR values are more than 20, we should give fresh frozen plasma. So this is oral anticoagulant. Now coming to the last topic on drugs acting on blood are hemopoietic growth factors. These are the drugs which increases the which stimulates the granulopoiesis, erythropoiesis, like granulopoiesis, erythropoiesis, and thrombopoiesis. Hematopoietic growth factors are the drugs which initiates granulopoiesis, erythropoiesis, and thrombopoiesis. So first, let us discuss about drugs which are initiating erythropoiesis. Initiate which initiate the erythropoiesis. Drugs which initiate the erythropoiesis. So there are two classes of drugs. Class 1, they are erythropoietin analogs. First group of drugs are erythropoietin analogs, and next group of drugs are erythropoietin receptor agonist. Erythropoietin receptor agonist. These are two classes of drugs which are working as drugs which stimulate the erythropoiesis. So what are the drugs which comes under erythropoietin analogs? One, epoetin alpha, and epoetin beta, and darbepoetin. Among these three, darbepoetin is the longest acting drug. So there are some uses of erythropoietin analogs, like it can be used in a condition with anemia with chronic renal failure. That is first use. And second use is anemia with chemotherapy, and next one is anemia caused because of anti-HIV drugs, and anemia which is caused because of dialysis. So these are erythropoietin analogs. And coming to the side effects, of erythropoietin analogs are, there will be iron deficiency, there will be deficiency of iron. First one is deficiency of iron, next one is hypertension, it results in hypertension, and next one is thrombosis, results in thrombosis, and next one is flu-like symptoms. These are some side effects of erythropoietin analogs. And next one is erythropoietin receptor agonist, that is pegnicetide. So pegnicetide, and this is a recent drug which is discovered in 2012, and it is used in a condition like anemia with chronic renal failure. So these are some drugs which increases the erythropoiesis. And next one is drugs which can increase granulopoiesis. The drugs which increase granulopoiesis, they are again classified into two classes. Granulocyte colony stimulating factors analog, granulocyte colony stimulating factor analog, and next one is granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor analog. Drugs which are acting or which increase the granulopoiesis are classified into two categories. One is granulocyte colony stimulating factor analogs, next one is granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor analogs. So what are the drugs which comes under are filgrastim, and lenograstim. Filgrastim and lenograstim, and here sergastim. sargamostin. So these are three drugs. If we see the uses, it is used for the treatment of neutropenia. They're used for the treatment of neutropenia, and there is side effects like there is bone pains. There will be pains within the bone. These are some side effects. So these are drugs which increases the granulocytes like granulocyte colony stimulating factors and granulocyte macrophage stimulating factors like filgrastim, linograstim, and sargamostin. So these are the drugs which activates the granulocytes. Next one is drugs which increases thrombocytosis, thrombopoiesis. Drugs which increases thrombopoiesis. They are again classified in two categories like interleukin 11 analog, interleukin 11 analog, and thrombopoietin analog. Thrombopoietin analog. So these are two classes of drugs which are studied under drugs which increases thrombopoiesis. The first one is oprilerkin is the first drug which is classified under interleukin 11A analogs. So it is used for the treatment of thrombocytopenia. Uses for thrombocytopenia. This is the first drug, that is thrombocytopenia, and next drug is coming as thrombopoietin analogs like romiplastin, and next one is L-trombopep, rombiplastin and ELTRAMBOP, L-trombopep. So these are the two drugs which comes under thrombopoietin analogs. So what is the use like? They are used in conditions like uses immune. They are used in conditions like immune thrombocytopenic PILVA, ILP. So these are the drugs which increases the thrombopoiesis. So with this we have completed drugs which are acting on blood. So we have covered only the anticoagulants, but there is one more category, that is coagulants, which includes vitamin like vitamin K, vitamin B12. So that vitamin K and vitamin B12 are little bit easy, but these are some of the important topics and which are hard to remember. So with the help, with this we have completed the drugs which are acting on blood, but I didn't cover the small topics like vitamin K and vitamin B12. So I have covered only the hot topics like anticoagulants, like antiaggregants, fibrinolytics, antifibrinolytics, and anticoagulants.